First and foremost, welcome to the February edition of Ask Me Anything about social enterprise. I'm Jessica Birkin from the Haskayne School of Business at the University of Calgary. Today here representing the Trico Foundation Social Entrepreneurship Center, and I'm really excited to be hosting this session. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that the University of Calgary is situated on the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. I'm actually tuning in from my home office today, which is situated on land adjacent to the Bow River, which has shaped this land and its people for generations. If you're joining us from outside of Calgary today and would like to acknowledge the traditional territories where you are, please feel free to share in the chat. So for those of you who have tuned in to an AMAASE session before, welcome back. You know the drill. Start thinking about your questions. You can start dropping those in the chat too. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. This is truly an Ask Me Anything style event with no formal agenda beyond offering answers to your questions about social entrepreneurship and sharing other resources you might consider or might find helpful. That said, we rely on audience questions to drive the session's content. So if you have a question, please feel free to drop it into the chat now, and we'll get started after some brief panel introductions. There's truly no silly questions, so please don't be worried. We'll invite you to unmute and ask your question to the panel, but if you'd prefer I read out the question right from the chat, that's totally fine too. And without further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce today's panel. We've got Jane Bisbee, Executive Director of Social Enterprise Fund, Brittany Kurluk, Manager of Social Entrepreneurship Training and Funding at the Trico Charitable Foundation. Joining her from the Trico Charitable Foundation is Dan Overall, the Foundation's Executive Director. We've got Jerome Morgan from Innovate Calgary. Jerome's a Senior Innovation Manager at the Social Innovation Hub and also leads Innovate's Inclusive Innovation Portfolio. And then rounding out the panel, we have Jeff Loomis, Executive Director at Momentum. Now, who might have a question to kick us off? I've got someone with a raised hand, no fixed address. Why don't you go ahead and unmute and ask the panel your question? And if you want to introduce yourself as well, that'd be super.
Hi there, thanks. Just mic check, okay? You can hear? Good, okay, because it's a new headset. I've got a student group happening right beside me. So they're the Model UN group. So they're preparing for the U of C's Model UN at the end of February. So I'm tucked away in the corner. So I'm a high school teacher in Calgary, been doing this for 16 years, social studies, legal, psychology, forensic science, all that. And I have business degrees, I've never used them before. And then I got talking with some people when I work with outreach and in my own lived experience with a father who died on the streets of Hamilton, led me to want to do a social business. And so No Fixed Address is simple. It's a pay it forward soup kitchen. And I've secured this all myself. I have a trailer with a pizza oven and a soup tureen. I've got a soup provider who will make the products for me, and then I will distribute it on a pay it forward model. And right now I'm in the final stages of getting a seasonal parks permit with City of Calgary to operate opposite Jack Singer next to the famous 5 statues from now until September. So you'll see me there evenings and weekends, engaging our public about insecurities and also working on this model that it's like the giving wall. It's the same as the giving wall. It's a half price cost for the second one and you leave it behind as a token. If there's a token in the bowl, then I'm covered to give it away. But I haven't been able to get any grants or any help from anyone I've spoken to. So I'm just really pushing this thing on my own. And I'm just looking, I've heard that there's social innovation help out there for entrepreneurs. And I'm just looking to find out some more about that. So if anyone can speak to that, I'd be happy to listen. Thank you.
Maybe I'll ask a clarifying question. What, when you say help, what kind of help are you really looking for?
That's a great question. I'm looking for some sustainability, and the best way I can address the sustainability factor of being able to continue operating in a pay it forward model and being a business that has overhead and expenses not covered by any external agencies or grants would be to pre-sell huggable tokens. So the tokens are the ones in the bowl, and if I pre-sell huggable tokens, I can create outreach events. So I could say to the Boys and Girls Club of Calgary that say 80 bowls of soup have been pre-purchased. I'm coming to you, and I have different partners like Alex in from the cold. I have several connections in the social ecosystem in Calgary that are interested in me giving them product. What I'm having difficulty is finding ways to create a more sustainable method where I can do more outreach. And the constant thing I run into is, well, you're a business, so and I chose to be a business, not a not-for-profit company. So I'm kind of in my own corner here. I painted myself in there, but I do believe it's going to work, and I'm committed to seeing it through.
So really your question right at the minute is the marketing and sales puzzle that you have for the tokens, because that's really your revenue stream, right?
Yeah, I operate in 3 ways. I can do a private event, so any help with a corporate event or a private event can generate there's no gratuities. So the idea is instead of gratuities, it generates huggables, and then you could add on huggables if you wanted to, and they would be destined for outreach. And then I would share that back through social so people could see videos of me handing them out.
Right.
So that's a big one. And then the other one is my street vending. While I'm street vending, people can come up and just buy huggables right from me, or they can add one on. And then the third way I work is just straight outreach. So when I see a need or I get approached by a group to show up, if I have the means, I'll be there. So
Right.
yeah, it is marketing the message, but it's also creating sustainability and how I could get.
It's I'm going to
Yeah, it's
stop you
tricky.
right there. It's not just about marketing. That's one piece of it. It's about sales, right? So, I mean, your business, so you understand that you need revenue streams. Grants might be a revenue stream, but I always like to encourage any social entrepreneur to really think about what who their customer is and their revenue stream, where their money's come from. So you have stakeholders who are the people who are um, buying your product on the street, but you also have another product, which is probably really where your revenue is going to come from in selling the tokens to the people who are going to purchase at a higher level than your actual cost at your trailer, right? Am I connecting those dots? Yeah. So I would think that what the thought process and the work that you need to focus on right now is around what your real product is, which is in a way the tokens and the other opportunities that you're giving. I think you could drive yourself mad trying to find grants. You may be able to find small grants that would give you a leg up in various aspects of what you're doing. But I'd urge you to really sit back and think about who you are as a business, who your customer is that wants to pay you money for the thing you're doing to be able to deliver your mission. And that's often a challenge for social entrepreneurs, is to figure out which one's the stakeholder and the mission that they want to push forward and where the revenue stream's actually coming from. That was a long clarifying question, sorry.
Yeah, I would just add to that. There's always the piece that we talk to organizations around, like pressure points, right? And how you're blending the social and the entrepreneurial. And so some of those pieces around, you ultimately want to be able to pass off the cost of that social piece, right? Those additional events or the additional people that you're going to feed to the customer that's paying, right, in your model. Like, because if you don't, then you might have to look at grants and things like that, which are fewer and far between as a for-profit entity. And there are some legislative changes happening that might make them more feasible for organizations. But that piece around sort of why are customers there? How do you compete with other businesses, right? So sort of what is bringing the customer to your offering, and then thinking through, this social piece is adding additional cost to my model. So how am I going to offset those costs, right? And so being really clear on that customer piece is key to ensure that it operates the way that you want in terms of sustainability, right? Is you want to be aware of those costs sooner than later. So there's some tools that can help you do that. Trico has a few, thinking through like the pressure points in your model, and then thinking through, okay, if we can't pass off the costs to our customer, or some days we can and some days we can't, right? Like it really depends on who comes to the food truck today, or if we just happen to get somebody who wants to buy for an entire school, you know, how do you operate in maybe times when there's more pressure points, right? And thinking through those pieces. And oh, sorry, I just want to add too, have you talked to any, because I like, have you talked to any sort of pay it forward businesses that that are using this model?
Lourdes Swan, Leftovers and Fresh Roots, been in contact with them quite a bit.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, no.
Okay. So that might be something, one of the things that Trico talks a lot to organizations about is the power of talking to people who've been there, done that, right? And so talking to pay it forward, I'm thinking of the Wahlburgers, is that what it's called? The Wahlberg brothers had a burger joint that was like, do the pay it forward, but something like that, right? Like thinking through, are there other organizations that have like successfully operated this model, and what did that look like, right? Because you might have someone come to you and say, hey, no, we actually ended up having to structure ourselves in a different way, or we had to tweak ourselves in this way, or we had huge success with like the corporate community or something like that. Those are learnings that somebody who's on the ground and has done it, there's huge value in that. So I would sort of think about who else has used this pay it forward model, even if it's not the exact same as yours, and how has that worked out for them? Because I think there's tons of learnings for you as well.
Yeah, creative plagiarism is a great idea. One thing that you, oh, I see Jeff's got his mic off. I'm going to just say one other small thing is that you said you have a business degree that you've never used. I bet you use it every day. So don't downgrade that. So
it is from Haskayne, so I mean, yes, it prepared me well.
Yeah, I was just going to add that right away I started thinking of Fresh Roots and totally agree with like learn from others that have gone down a similar path, even if it's not the same, that it can be really valuable. And then I saw your interest kind of peaked, or your curiosity was raised when Brittany mentioned the legislative change. So just to be aware, I'm pretty sure what she's talking about is the change in legislation for charities to be able to provide grants to what's called non-qualified donees using the CRA language, so it doesn't have to go to another charity. So that's fairly new and just coming to an effect, but I wouldn't, kind of as Brittany said, I wouldn't like hope on that or count on that as a major part of your revenue. And so I was curious, when you're located outside the famous 5 statue, are you charging full rates to like the sort of average customer that walks by, and then the token becomes like, instead of a gratuity, that's the pay it forward model? So if that's the case, then it seems like a big part of your revenue stream and your customers, as Jane said, is that full pay model of the customer just buying soup from you. Is that correct?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yes. And I just put a link in the chat room to some videos. I created some quick facts. There's 5 videos explaining how it works. The key part is called a huggable. The huggable is the fact that we're all reachable. We all deserve dignity. And that's my main aim, is looking at insecurities, particularly food insecurities, and looking at how it's all wrapping together to make us more transparent and aware of each other, so that we're actually building a community. And that's the idea, that we're building community by those who can afford to pay half, which is cost, for a second bowl, and they can take it with them or they can leave it behind.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, so that just kind of reinforces Jane's point of being really clear on your product and your customer, because it does sound more and more like the way you describe your product is actually the huggable, and then it just so happens that the soup is a way to like provide the huggable in a way. So the more clear you can be on that product, and then who really is the paying customer, the easier it will be to blend your financial sustainability, using Brittany's language, and then your social impact sustainability.
We've also had a note in the chat that you might consider, I mean, what a partnership with another nonprofit or a charity could look like, serving kind of that same stakeholder population. So I don't know if Yeah, Brittany, do you want to chime in there?
Yeah, I'm just going to chime in. So not giving legal advice, but just want to note is that there are some rules around fiscal agents and partnering with charitable organizations. And you just really want to make sure that you're on side with the CRA and working with the charity in that way. And there's lots of rules around that in terms of connection and stuff like that. So just want to point that out, that it's something you would want to, and any organization you'd partner with would want to really be on top of the rules from CRA.
Yeah, Brittany, I appreciate that. And I'm just going to say this quickly. It's really important to me that I stand on my own 2 feet and do this. I had the option to go that route, and I purposely chose this because I believe it's a sustainable model. And the other thing is the revolving door that I saw in fund procurement was unevenly balanced towards large organizations that have staff dedicated to fundraising and grant and community relations versus the smaller grassroots organizations I was volunteering with, who literally were writing one grant after the other to even keep the lights on in the next quarter, not knowing if they were going to get it. So I didn't want to fall into that or take away from the little bit that's there from anyone who really doesn't have diverse income structure. And I purposely built this company to have diversity in income structure so that I don't have to go to grant. So I'm just looking to do it on my own.
Yeah.
But partners are always the best.
I am so happy to hear you have learned those lessons, because they can be hard lessons to learn, and really, really important ones. I put in the chat sometimes that I think of grants like angel capital for nonprofits, so that you don't put it into your revenue stream, your operating revenue stream. You stick with it acting as scaling money to your next, like to do a marketing campaign or whatever, those things you might do that are outside of your regular ongoing operating. But I think you're really smart. And I agree, Brittany, to look at all kinds of other organizations. And maybe the most important thing you'll learn is what not to do rather than following how they're doing it. So
if I can jump in, I'm Jerome Morgan at the Social Innovation Hub at the University of Calgary here. One of the key things I would say is definitely get connected to your community of other social entrepreneurs, because I think that's going to also leverage and provide some key value for you. So just being able to kind of tap into a group that's similar to you, that wants to stand on their own 2 feet, wants to do things differently, and is looking for sustainability by providing their product and service in a different way. So yeah, I'll put in the chat also just a couple of links of different places you can meet and kind of connect with other social entrepreneurs, and then other resources for you as well. And there's a lot of support out there just around the business coaching called around how to validate your business model as well, just to kind of see if there's any blind spots in it. So I'll just put that in the chat, and you can take it from there.
That was a great question. Thanks so much for sharing, and for everyone who chimed in on responses, both here and in the chat. Why don't we move on now to Rhonda? You've had your hand up here. Would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to put this on and have people like me and the last gentleman ask questions that I think most of us, I don't know about anybody else, I'll speak for myself, are a little bit nervous asking, going, could I have not found this out somehow else? But so I appreciate being able to out and ask. And nice to see you, Jane. I don't know if Jane remembers me, but I used to be up in the Edmonton area. And so I'm a fundraising consultant. And so similar to where the last gentleman was speaking, I work with nonprofits who are trying to find ways to diversify their revenue sets. And so right now I have two very interesting groups that I'm working with that I know. One of them right now has a viable business opportunity that they have already proven their scope of project is proven. And the question is, what's the next step, and legal structure. So legal structure. So let me talk first about the one client. They are an organization. Actually, I know we're being recorded, and so I hate to let anything out of the bag, but I think that this is all out in the open. They have started out as CADS Alberta, and so it's an organization that looks to provide equipment and training for individuals who have disabilities to get onto the ski hill, or basically snow sports in general. And so it's been around for 50 plus years, and they have 4 different pillars, and again, education and equipment and training. And one of the last ones is competition. And so before COVID, they had a competition link pillar, and then COVID hit and it kind of just fizzled. This last year, so I actually live in Cochrane, and I happened to run into the executive director, and they started a training center, a para-athlete training center here in Cochrane. And so athletes have to pay to come to this training center. And so it's housed here. And there is no physical bricks and mortar, but the athletes will go to COP in Calgary, or they go to Norquay, or they go to Nakiska, and they use for dry land training. They're using the center here in Cochrane. And they have housing. So we've been sourcing housing. So to get to the point of it, the athletes from across the world. So we have 26 athletes that have come here from Australia or Great Britain or Ireland. And that's all we can accommodate, to be honest, because there's no housing in Cochrane. That's accessible, that is affordable, because all of this gets tapped onto the bill, let's call it that, like it's a service that we're charging. So there's also clients or participants coming from Canada, of course. And so from further away, we're charging more money. And it's a proof of concept is there. People are calling, going, we want more, we want more. And not only are they wanting to come here for snow sports, like not just alpine skiing, but for cross-country skiing and for snowboarding. They're also calling us saying, we would like to come and bring wheelchair basketball, our para athletes. And so what I'm learning, and so please bear with me as I'm relaying this information and seeking your input and your sage advice, is what I'm learning is that a lot of para athlete training can be done in Europe, but their snow's not good there. So snow's good here. But also the whole para athlete industry doesn't have training specific training centers. It's mostly, well, why don't you fit in? Because these athletes are trying to get to at this competitive level. These are high performance athletes that are competing to go to the Olympics. You know, they're wanting to get to the Paralympics in turn. They're on the development team for their specific country coming here. But what we're learning is that there is a desire for there being a para athlete training hub. So they have proof of concept. They started this in May, full by the first week of September. And we're running through the program right now. And it's like, okay, now what? We recognize that we need housing in order to make this viable and grow. And so that's kind of where I've come in, because now I'm helping them to look at some capital projects and who we can be connecting with. But all of a sudden it's just like, okay, time out. What's the legal structure that we should be looking at? And I'm looking for sage advice, because Brittany, I heard you talk to the people who've been there, done that. And so I'm showing up, raising my hand, but I'm looking for advice on where to step or how to next help this client with this extremely great cause. And again, I guess I should be, I hope if it wasn't inherent, the funds from this business go to helping CADS Alberta, going to help the 9 clubs that we have and the other three streams that we've got. So the revenue will be reinvested into the nonprofit. Advice, thoughts?
So have to preface this in terms of we are not lawyers, and unfortunately legal advice goes outside of what we offer, just because we are not lawyers. So you don't want our legal advice.
Fair enough for me.
What I will note is that there are different ways in which organizations can structure themselves, and it really depends on what your goals are, right? What do you want to achieve? And we always talk to organizations about understanding it's about function, not necessarily form. So you want to know what you want to do, and then determine the best legal structure that fits and will help you achieve what you want to do. And there's a ton of conversation happening in the chat box right now.
Oh, okay. I turned it off so I could pay attention.
But around similar stuff around, hey, should I have done a not-for-profit structure? There are different rules depending on whether you're a for-profit organization, whether you're a not-for-profit organization that has charitable status, whether you are a not-for-profit organization that doesn't have charitable status. And so that's why talking to a lawyer specifically and determining what makes sense. So for example, like a charitable organization, they might have the leeway to do something like a related business. But you want to talk to a lawyer to ensure that this project aligns with what your organization is mandated to do, what your goals are, what it looks like. So talking to CRA, talking to a lawyer is going to be really key once you've kind of developed. It looks like you've kind of developed where you want to go, but that's going to be huge for you. And I know Jane has lots of thoughts on this, and Jeff's unmuted, so maybe we'll let Jeff go.
Yeah, just a quick thought is if it's the function of this new, more business entity is to generate profits for the host nonprofit,
Yep.
it can be structured as a for-profit that's owned by a non-for-profit too. That's like part of the many possibilities that Brittany outlined. So nonprofits can own for-profits.
Okay. Okay. So the
keep
question,
that in
sorry, Jeff,
mind.
I don't mean to interrupt, but because
Yeah.
my brain is always about fundraising, because that's how I help. And so the goal would, I'm looking at the advantages and disadvantages, because we're looking at capital work as well, is they would love to be able to write tax receipts. So, and that's where the host PSO, the provincial sport organization, is charitable. And so, but this is a proven concept. We're like, okay, well, let's do this. We can diversify revenue. So sorry, I just wanted to pass that in there and add that in there. Then does that model allow, and I understand I actually contacted a lady too, Yvonne Chu.
Yeah, okay. That was the other thing I was going to say is like, it's one thing to talk to a lawyer. Not that many lawyers are well informed about all the nuance between non-for-profit, for-profit, and all the, to some degree, gray area in between. So if you're that's what I was going to put in the chat was Yvonne Chen, definitely the best person.
Got her. Yep.
So
Okay.
that's good that you're on the right path talking to Yvonne, because she can help you with the right legal advice.
Okay, but so you're saying that is an option for a not-for-profit to own a for-profit business, and then are they still allowed to issue tax receipts then for?
No.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
no.
no!
The charity has to, the
Charity will
has
issue
to
the tax
provide the tax receipts, but it has to be for charitable purposes, right? You can't just give a tax receipt if it's not going to a charitable purpose. So these are all the nuances that are very important to think through and to be very clear on, because if the charity is setting up a for-profit as a way to actually provide tax receipts for something that's not a charitable purpose, they're going to get their hands slapped royally by the CRA if they ever get audited. So that's why you have to be very careful that if it's a for-profit, they're doing for-profit business activities, then that for-profit, the dividends, like if it is actually profitable, that's an important thing to keep in mind. It actually has to make money.
Yeah.
Those can be returned to the charity.
Okay.
So while everything that Brittany and Jeff have said, you absolutely have to think through and do the research on, I'm going to suggest that almost the last person you should talk to is a lawyer. You've got a whole lot of thinking to do before you even get to that point.
Okay.
There's no reason why your nonprofit couldn't probably hold this whole entire business as it already stands, right? But the question is all about the things that have been raised about how you're going to actually earn your revenue and how you're actually going to finance the building. So I'd finance something like that in about a nanosecond if the numbers all worked, if you actually could afford and support the borrowing.
Yeah.
So that's, to me, it's kind of your least problem. People need to think about what is the best management structure to hold the day-to-day business of what they're doing, and to actually then be able to do the things like, if you really need tax receipt status to be able to do what you're going to do, then you're going to have that kind of structure. But is a board of directors of a nonprofit society the best structure to run a business? Maybe not. So
Yeah.
I usually people come and say, oh, what structure? I usually make them go through a bit of an exercise of, I don't kind of care what your structure is right now. I want to know what you want this thing to look like when it's walking around on the ground 5 years from now. And where's your revenue coming from? Who's your customer and who runs it? Who makes decisions about who runs it? And where's your money coming from? And what are the rules for the kind of money that you've got coming in? And then you back up to the point where you, now we can talk to a lawyer with some actual understanding of what they're telling us about what the rules for all the different kinds of not-for-profit and for-profit. There are 11 different not-for-profit structures that are open to you in the province of Alberta.
Oh,
That's madness, right? And
Okay.
and Jeff's right. Not every lawyer will understand all of that. So you need to know what you need this thing to do for you before you can probably accurately figure out which kind of structure that you need. And everything they said about rules and you can't do this and you need to do that, it are absolutely true. But until you can go into a room and ask the right questions because of what you know about how you're going to use that legal structure, you're kind of you're
Fair.
not going to hear what they're saying to you. Because Jeff's right, there are lawyers and then there are lawyers, and some of them never deal with this, so they don't have the experience, and you can't blame them.
So maybe we should be spending more time finalizing our business plan. If I'm hearing you right, Jane, your recommendation would be spend more time finalizing your business plan of a perceived, goal of what this is going
Yeah.
to look like. Just even today, we were working on the structure of what the, visioning what the organization would look like for staffing and doing our revenue. But so then have that, because we are glomming on. You do hear me go, well, if we're going to get to a capital campaign, we want to have that ability to write the tax receipts. So I'm glomming on to things, but if we get it all out in the open, then that gives us a more fuller picture to make the best decision.
The first time that I got smacked in the face with this was the first loan we lost, which we had to call it because the business went sideways. And the business went sideways because they turned themselves into a nonprofit structure to get at our money. We no longer are only lending to nonprofit structures, in part because of that learning. Because that particular structure was absolutely wrong for them to be able to run the business in the time of real space, right? And so the decisions took too long because they had a board of directors and blah. So you can imagine what that was like day to day. And so it's really incredibly important to think this through and get the right legal advice, but you have to understand the ins and outs of how your business is going to work or how you think it's going to work and how that structure then supports how that business works.
Do any of you, going back to the concept of talk to the been there, done that people, based on what I've said so far, does anybody have any recommendations of somebody that we should be speaking to just to hear some of their what not to do or to do?
Just 2 cents from an operational perspective from your community that you're representing there, Rhonda. Also, great question, great conversation, always a pleasure. The Alberta Ability Network, do you do some research and some feedback loops with them?
No. Tell
Okay,
me.
so I sit on their human rights table.
Okay.
The Alberta Ability Network is connected to the Human Rights Tribunal, as from everything to that to cerebral. They partner with Cerebral Palsy Alberta, but they're going to have a wealth of information, and Maison would be a really good help just to get insights into who in the community would be able to help you from. Cal Schuler's there, and he developed the access design standards with the city of Calgary. You're going to find some great connections and people that kind of run the conversation here. Sean with Crucial and looking at different accessible maps and how the communities leveraged through that type of infrastructure. So that'll just give you some better things to think about when you're looking at how to operate to meet those needs, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. This is all new. This was a conversation today too, even just about the housing itself and what it looks like in the accessibility to the dry. Like it was like, whoa, we have so much to go. So thank you very much for that.
And lastly, Inclusio is one of the old only gold medal awarded by the Rick Hansen Foundation for disability accessible housing, and they exist in Capitol Hill.
Calgary. I seen them too online, and I was like, okay, I needed to connect in with them. So thank you, Stacy. Who are you with, Stacy? If you don't mind sending me a note on the chat, we'll connect.
Can do.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I've come to a couple of yours, but not able to ask questions, or nervous to ask a question. So thank you for the welcoming feeling.
Thank you, Rhonda. I hope that wasn't too bad. And thanks for the question into the panel, and Stacy for the additional insight you provided there. I'm Stacy. You have your hand up. Is that a lingering hand or a new hand? New hand. Super. Why don't you unmute and go ahead?
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. I know some faces here, which is great. But for those that don't know me, I'm the chairperson of the Perlin Foundation for Wellbeing. Now, I'm shaking, Rhonda, so there is no level of comfort with this. We're putting ourselves outside of our comfort zone for a reason. So I need help. We're in year 5. We are a nonprofit incorporated under the Corporations Act that works with a minimal board structure that has adapted over the last few years, growing through COVID, to establishing a service that is being adopted in research partnerships as well as services. So win, yay, cool. However, I'm at the point now where I am winning too much, and that shouldn't be the case. I do need some help, and I would love some advice on where I might look for this particular kind of help. And it's funny that you say the board thing, because I used to think it was a board problem. Jane, we had some great conversations about that. I run a very interesting organization at this point, where the nonprofit is sort of like an information desk to the mental health ecosystem. So we run free virtual events for people to get to know different perspectives on mental health. We are working on a fundraising street festival that we have been working towards for 3 years now. We did our mini festival last year, which was a great success. We had to step back because I was trying to do a festival in August when the entire city got their August back for the first time in 3 years. So this year we are coming back in September. And as you might have imagined, I had to reach out to Beakerhead to make sure that Parker and I weren't booked on the same days. Of course we are. Parker was gracious enough to say, perhaps we might make space within our festival for your festival. And I really want that to happen. And I have such a minimal structure that is working really well with a social enterprise arm that does our talks and our games for bookings throughout the year. But my board, which is, again, my working partner who is legal and accountant background, which has been really helpful, is going to be stressed beyond our capacity if we try to take it all on this year. I was late to this meeting because I just finished a conversation with the Alberta SPORE unit because we are taking on research projects with them. Yay, I'm shaking. So I'm trying to find out who best to, and it's great to see you, Daniel. We'll be actually your speaker in May for Mental Health Awareness Month for the Trico Changemakers conversations. We have some great working relationships, but I think that it's up to us. Like, we have charity partners to do the actual events and the project funding pieces. What I'm looking around help for is, from an operational perspective, usually I have advisory boards and I reach out to different organizations and help, but this is really just the best place to ask everybody at the same time. What do you suggest would be a step toward sanity when facing this type of situation? Thank you.
So my thinking as you were talking was about the power of advisory groups and advisory committees. And it sounds like you've kind of gone down that avenue. So maybe it's not what works for you, but that's one of the places that we often talk to organizations about, is that your board might not have the capacity or the skill set, right, to specifically work on something new your organization is exploring or your organization's focusing on. And so that power of finding people in the community that maybe have some more of those skills and are willing to give up some time, and maybe not even in like a full on, I'm building something, but hey, can we have a coffee and talk about these pitfalls or things that you have dealt with or how you deal with them, I think is a really powerful thing. So we talked earlier about, the people who have been there, done that. We also talk about friendly wise skeptics a lot, but really looking at, are there people who are out there that have been there and done that and are kind of willing to call you on your assumptions, right? And maybe some of those pieces. And so that was where my thinking was going as you were talking, until your like last sentence when you mentioned that maybe they weren't as powerful. I think the other key thing is
But
that
I agree with the advisory strategy, right? Because
Yeah,
then
like-
again, it takes the pressure off. It allows people to come to the table when they can. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is that I think you have to be really clear as you start like developing those types of groups, what the scope is and what they're willing to give. Because people are busy, and so for some people it's going and getting a coffee and just chatting about it is what they can give, and some people might be more invested in it. But I'm wondering about like sort of those community groups that you're meeting with and maybe might be partnering with you, is they might have some really interesting voices to bring to the table as well.
I appreciate that. It's we have a unique challenge in that not a lot of people work in this type of business. And it's a completely innovative marketplace. Most of our advisory board work in the last 5 years has been, again, we wouldn't exist without them. And again, those relationships are incredibly important. I think what we're looking for is this idea of, do I create advisory boards for each project? Because that to me is the logical step, right? An advisory board for research, an advisory board for the events. And then really, I think just identifying some of the meetings over the last couple of years with people that, you know, have been there, done that, like you say, working on the Stephen Avenue stuff, that kind of thing, where they're currently having conversations so they'll know exactly where things fall into place. And then other experience of working with like cities and different partners and stuff like that, I think still is the strategy to go with from what I'm hearing, if that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, like, you kind of need to figure out what your feasibility is and what you can capacity wise do. And I always use the example of like, not every customer is the right customer, right? So sometimes maybe it's not the right event or the right research project or the right thing for you if you don't have the capacity, right? So I think thinking through those pieces is really key. And in terms of being a unique organization, there's a big world out there. So is there somebody else that has done that, even if they're not local to you?
Yeah, don't know until I start asking. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Brittany. And you're right, it's go with what works and respecting people's time and energy. And yeah.
I feel like somebody else needs to add. Okay.
I was going to say, does anyone else on the
Okay.
panel want to chime in or kind of offer any other support to Stacy?
Sure, I'll jump in. I once had a boss who said he was too busy to get organized, and you need to be careful of that. And strategy at its best is not choosing between good and bad. It's choosing between good and great. And you just need to kind of realize you can't do it all. So you've got to pick your spots. And Trico has training in two things. One, it's on social entrepreneurship, and two, it's empowering you to like figure things out. So there's a bunch of tools there if you'd be interested in checking out in terms of mapping out what you think your strategy would be, consulting. And another thing is getting really good at experimenting and testing. So, hey, choosing between these two things, what little experiment could you do to see if they would have momentum, and then decide, as opposed to just like committing to an idea and saying, you know, no matter what the results are, we're going to power through this because we got to. So it's, again, it's that all that discipline to tap into that expertise, but also test things, plan things out, do actions, but always, again, listen to the signals the universe are telling you. And one of the great challenges in this space is because it's about making the world a better place, it's so hard to say no. So again, you need to keep an eye on that you're not kind of burning yourself out and pacing yourself and making smart decisions. Because again, if you put so much stress on yourself and trying to do it all that you blow a gasket, or with a gasket of your stakeholders, in the long run, who's better off, right? So keep an eye on your own kind of mental health and what your processes are, and again, embrace these principles. It may not be the Trico tools, it may be something else, but have that tool set that helps you kind of navigate these challenges.
I think Dan's comment about testing is really important too. the most interesting story I ever heard about launching a business was actually Wired magazine. And one of the things that one of the key people from that said was that, you know, you take your plan, what you want to do around, and you give it to smart people who you think can give you some advice. And then you take that advice home and you figure out why it's all that is wrong. Don't just take it as gospel truth, that if you can push a hole in it because you know some part of that better than the advice that you're being given, then that's valid too. So you know, you do know stuff, and you don't have to just take everything that somebody else tells you. Test what they're telling you and why, and if you can prove that, you know, they're wrong, then that's valid too.
Yeah, we always, like with the friendly wise skeptic thing, one of our pieces that we always talk to groups about is like, try to figure out where the info's coming from or what they're suggesting is coming from, because they might have been really burned once and then just decided that's the way it is. So sometimes getting that background info is really key. And then, like Dan said, thinking through, you know, are there ways that I can move about this in a logistical manner, a logical manner, but also while keeping my organization as risk-free as possible, right? Like how do I stay in a safe zone? We talk about it as affordable loss, right? What am I willing to lose? But how do I move this forward, try these things out, and just experiment and learn along the way.
And Stacey, to follow up on Dan's point around, like, it does really feel like it's a strategy level challenge that you have is we are just entering a strategic process for ourselves at Momentum, and we've done some learning through IDEO and, like, you know, a famous design firm that created their IDEO. And so few of our staff have done their designing strategy course, so I can put it in the chat for you as a potential resource. But something that really stuck for us is thinking about strategy as Dan described it, is as a choice. And so the definition they use for strategy, it's a set of choices we make today in the face of uncertainty, so that unknown, in order to increase the likelihood that you'll be able to exceed now and into the future. And so that idea of, like, just really narrowing in on it, it is about choices. And they're not always easy choices because as Dan said, it's not like good and bad. It's sometimes it's like good and potentially better. And that's where testing can come in. The whole IDEO approach based on, like, design thinking and innovation is all about, like, how do you test your assumptions and get as, like, much data as early as possible to inform that choice. So we're pretty early in that journey of using this IDEO approach for our strategy process. It's going to be new to us. I can't say it's going to, like, work amazingly well, but the idea of really focusing on the fact that it is a choice is really helpful. And because so much of it is personal for you, I just encourage you to, like, as Dan said, like, with well-being being so core to your work, is keep your own personal well-being really top of mind as well, and then the well-being of the people you're working with too.
I appreciate that from everybody. That was beautiful. And just in case you're curious, the aha moment, it seems so obvious, but Daniel, my assumption was that with the research partnership, to me, it's MOU, start with small pieces, work towards it, we'll work it and build it as we go forward. That was a no-brainer. With Beakerhead, I'm like, how do I show up in full? And I'm ready to jump to the end. Like, of course we have to start small. Of course we got to break it down. So thank you for just giving me the reality check I was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacey, for your feedback in the last question, and your willingness to kind of be vulnerable here and just kind of show up as you are. That's so appreciated. And thanks everyone for the great responses. We actually at the Haskayne School had the opportunity to do some work with an IDEO facilitator late last year, and it was a fabulous experience too. So that's us kind of vouching for that approach to strategic decision making too.
I have a question.
Jan, let's hear it.
This one's for Jane Bisbee. Jane, what is it like to be the only federal rep on the new federal committee on social innovation and social investment? And if you could tell us a little bit about it, and congratulations on your appointment, one of only 5 in Canada.
Thank you very much. Hopefully there'll be a few more bodies added to it. The Social Innovation Advisory Council has been appointed to help the federal government implement social innovation, social finance towards a better, more inclusive economy in the country. You may be familiar with with a steering committee report that came out in 2018 called the Inclusive Economy, and it had 12 recommendations in it. One of which was create a social finance fund, which we're this close to having actually done. And some of you may have been associated with the investment readiness program too, because that came out of the same initial work. And so we're going to try to help spur the government along a little faster to get some of this stuff done and to help them hear what's going on across the country in this sector. So I'm going to be relying on all of you people to tell me stuff and to help us understand what should be done and what could be done to sort out things like, oh, I don't know, better CRA rules to allow this kind of work to happen. Things where the different government departments aren't quite so siloed from each other so that they have conflicting rules that then affect or even prohibit you from doing the kinds of things you're trying to do. So anyway, it's more talking in rooms to hopefully move the cause forward and help people understand what's going on. So thank you, Dan. There are days Dan sent me an email at one point that said, so what is social innovation? And my response was, damned if I know. We're going to have to figure that out and make it what we think it needs to be.
Thanks, Jane, and congratulations. And thanks, Dan, for the question. Jerome, you dropped a link in the chat. Did you want to follow up with any updates from Innovate?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, so we just launched a social innovation hub here at Innovation Quarters on the campus of University of Calgary. And so we're all about social innovation and social entrepreneurship. And so just want folks that are interested in being connected to other social entrepreneurs or building their social enterprise. There's a lot of resources that we're providing to the community as well as to students and professionals that are out there. So just wanted to get folks to be connected. We're going to also be hosting monthly social entrepreneurship meetups at the co-working space here. And we're also selling memberships for the space as well. So yeah, just get connected. If you have your social impact business idea, we have coaches on staff that's interested in just helping folks answer any key questions and just being able to validate some of their business models and different things like that. So just wanted to kind of share that. And there's a number of events that's there too. So thank you.
Super. Thanks, Jerome, and congratulations on that launch. That's super exciting. Steve, you've got your hand up. Would you like to unmute and ask a question?
Sure, thanks. It just got me thinking, what is there a source to understand finance around social innovation? Is there some resource online or something? You know, you keep checking down avenues. They go, oh, I've heard about social innovation or social impact bonds. I go, oh, I should check into that. And maybe that's an angle. I go, I don't even know what you're talking about. I can't even ask a proper question about it. I just learned how to spell it today. And so, okay, so just back right up and go, okay, for what it is I hope to achieve, there's probably funding or financing mechanisms that can be implemented, but okay, that looks like a learning curve because I don't understand finance. So I'm all the way at square one kind of thing. And just, can someone point me in the right direction where to get up to speed on finance for social innovation?
Probably
Thanks.
one of the things to look at would be the membership list of the Table for Impact Investment Practitioners, tip.ca. Pretty easy place to find, and that lists a whole bunch of organizations that are doing finance for social entrepreneurs, investing in it. So there's 5 or 6 social finance intermediaries in the province of Alberta, and but a handy course of exactly how to put finance into action is something that I'm still looking for.
Okay. That makes me feel better.
We don't kind of educate people generally on how to use money as a tool. And so you're absolutely, I mean, any business financing is kind of the same, regardless if you're a social entrepreneur or not. You may have a few extra interesting problems or challenges because you're a social entrepreneur, but it's the same sort of education that you need for any financing questions. But I'd read through what the TIP members are doing, or even take a look on our website. For example, I usually send people to the client section where you can see what people did with the money. And that could educate you as much as anything else.
Sure.
And then you can bore down a little bit on, okay, well then what did that actually look like in terms of when I was walking around and what it actually was. I don't come from a financing background, which sounds a little funny given the job that I do. But it drives me absolutely crazy is the sort of secret handshakes that financing is protected by. Like, it's like they don't want you to really understand. So there's a whole lot of jargon that gets added quite often around this stuff. And it's maybe not as mysterious as people think. I have a lot of nonprofit clients who don't use any of the social finance language, but they understand how to make money work to get stuff done. And so it could be that you don't need to have a commerce degree or an MBA to get this stuff. It could be interesting reading, but take a look around at who's doing what. Local Investing YYC here in the province, what USEED is doing, and then you'll start to get a feel for what different kinds of money come into the picture at different times, and that can help you quite a bit.
Hey, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Did anyone else on the panel have anything to add there?
Steve, that I put the Nemata link in. So that's a brand new resource portal for both like social enterprise resources for more on the training side, but also the finance side. So it was developed as a project of Alberta Seed, which is essentially a network that all of us on the panel are part of. So Trico, Innovate Calgary, Social Enterprise, and Momentum, really so we can try to ultimately build an ecosystem in Alberta where there's more social enterprise activity that would then include better deal flow to the available social finance funds in our province. And then Jessica, I can just do a quick update that in the spirit of Jerome's point around like find your tribe and like who you work with. So we host, lots of people know we host the Be Local network, which is a network of local businesses that are committed to their social impact. A little bit of the news I wanted to share is just that we've decided to shut down an online store that we launched during COVID. So that was a response to COVID. And for a whole bunch of reasons, we decided to shut it down. But the big one is so that we can really focus on our energy on how can we work with businesses more to increase their social impact and in a way that's more peer learning orientated. And one of the major initiatives that we host every year, well, we had a break during COVID, is Social Venture Institute that both Social Enterprise Fund and Trico Foundation have been sponsors of in the past. And we're trying to bring some of the spirit of SVI about how do we learn and connect with each other ultimately so that we can have better business outcomes and more social impact. We're trying to bring some of the spirit of SVI throughout the year and sort of everything we do with Be Local. So that's where, in the spirit of making choices and prioritizing, we decided we'd shut the store down so that we'd have more time and energy for more of that peer connection and learning. Yeah, and SVI, we're very close to having a date. We're aiming for late August, and we're almost, not quite signed, but very close to confirming to move SVI to Métis Crossing, which is a social enterprise in and of itself. in Northern Alberta. So we're really excited about that too.
Yeah, for those who haven't been there yet, absolutely beautiful, just outside of Smoky Lake on the big river. So it's beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Trico, did you want any updates on your end?
Nothing huge coming up. I would just identify, Omar put the link in the web or in the chat box, but we have a number of tools and resources available to organizations that are free, available 24/7. A lot of them are online for organizations, so they work around your busy schedules a bit better. So please feel free to check those out.
Awesome. Well, like I said, if we don't have anything keeping us here, I will not keep you here. Thank you everyone so much for joining today. It's February, so I can actually say we'll see you again this time next month. Our next session will be on Wednesday, March the 8th at the same time. Keep an eye out for the invitation to join that session, which will come out shortly after we post the video from this session. Thanks again to everyone on the panel. Thanks again to Omar for managing the tech behind the scenes. And thanks to everyone who joined us today, everyone who asked questions, everyone who just kind of tuned in. It's a pleasure to kind of be part of this broader ecosystem, and we appreciate everyone's participation. Have a great afternoon.